Welcome to another episode of the Learning to Choose podcast, episode number 4 with Ernesto Mandowsky. I'm your host, arts advocate, community builder, creative entrepreneur, and author behind Learning to Choose, Evan Snow. This new podcast series was created with the goal to discuss the stories behind pivotal choices, learning lessons, and takeaways from interesting individuals coming from various backgrounds and walks of life who have lived extraordinary lives. For more information on Learning to Choose and our author and host, log on to learningtochoose.com. Today's guest is Ernesto Mandowsky. He is the CEO of CPD Advisors, where he regenerates business with designing systems, training programs, and growth strategies. With a degree in systems engineering and over a decade of building systems for startups, scaling organizations, and Fortune 500 companies, Ernesto has designed a proprietary 6P system to improve performance, flow, and impact. He also inspires people to share their gift through keynote speaking, the Regenerate Your Business podcast, and local nonprofit service. When he's not working, he enjoys reading, going to CrossFit, and baking challah. And as you'll find out, we might not have this podcast if it wasn't for Ernesto. So we appreciate you making the time to join us on the show today. And if you'd like to just give us your own little intro at a high level as to kind of how you got started on this journey, making choices, I guess beginning in school, and kind of what led you to systems engineering and this path that you're on today.
Well, thank you, Evan, for having me here. Lots to unpack in your question. I will start with when I was 18 years old. I had made my first choice in that I wanted to get into the world of restaurants. I really loved how food could bring people together. And after throwing a huge party in my senior year, I said, I'm going to get into this wild world of hospitality. And when I went to school, I wasn't really attracted to business. I didn't really go to a culinary school. And someone recommended that I study systems engineering. When I took a look at what exactly that all meant, basically means connecting the dots at a high level. So I said that could sound pretty interesting for me. So that's what kind of led me into the systems engineering world.
Amen. And I happen to know this story because Ernesto has shared at our monthly breakfast lecture series, AAF Creative Zen, mini TED Talk that we host for free every second Friday morning of the month. But I know the path was not a straight and narrow path for you, and you did have to make a series of choices, some of which against your parents' best wishes potentially and recommendations. Can you kind of walk us through some of those early stage difficult choices that shaped the path that you're on today?
Yeah, so first, when I told my parents I wanted to go into restaurants, they all told me, you crazy? Like, restaurants fail all the time. And I said, well, I love it. I love the power that it has, and I'm going to do it anyways. And so from the beginning, it was already kind of like an uphill battle. Maybe choosing engineering was my way of still appeasing to their wishes and my own wishes as well. So that was still, we were still on the same page there. After I graduated, though, I started working at Deloitte. And that's, every Jewish mom's dream for their child to get a corporate America job. But I remember in my second year, I said, I'm getting sick and tired of this. I'm going to sign up for a course at a culinary school. When they said, oh, that's cute. How much does it cost? I said $15,000. And they kind of balked at me and said, what? And I said, yeah, you would promise to pay for my grad school one day, my MBA. This sounds like a solid alternative. And they're like, no, it doesn't. And, that's the PG version of it. But I said, you know what? Like, you're not going to help me. I'm going to help myself. I'm going to take out a credit card. I minted a fresh Amex, put $15,000 on it, and took the course. Started taking the course. And because of that course, I would eventually get a job in a restaurant group in New York City, which would pave the rest of my career inside of hospitality. And it was an amazing moment because of that decision. Yes, I got $15,000 in the hole, but it did open me up to this whole new world that I never even realized existed.
Amen. And some of your choices have been shaped by choices that other people made, some of which obviously outside of your control or your desires and wishes, some of which were shaped by the pandemic. Could you kind of tell us how maybe some of the choices from the employers that you were working for then further shaped your path?
Yeah. I think in every one of the jobs. So since that restaurant opportunity, I was I always had a lot of autonomy. I always because I was working in a new space, restaurants and tech was fairly new. No one really could tell me what to do, so I had to kind of figure out my own path. I had to figure out, learn new tools, learn new ways of working, and it was cool because I had autonomy. It was not cool because I had no guidance, and half the time I was faced with imposter syndrome. But either way, it led to creating an early sense of independence, who I am, and for entrepreneurship, I think when you become an entrepreneur, one of the hardest parts is kind of navigating that paradox where you're creating your own path, and no one's really quote unquote guiding you. You don't have a boss that's telling you what to do. You kind of have to like find your own confidence in that. Um, and so, yeah, I think with each of the jobs that I had working at that restaurant group or working at the tech startup that I followed up with, or even with the Palm, which was my last job, in all those jobs I had autonomy. And that's something that was almost like a non-negotiable for me. Like I wanted to have that, and I was very clear about that all throughout my journey.
Correct. And sometimes these journeys can be clear, sometimes they can be a little bit hazy. And obviously, the pandemic threw a wrench in a lot of situations. Would you, for those that are not familiar with your story and background, would you be so kind to share a little bit of the journey that you went on with the Palm and kind of put that in context, and then how that ultimately put you into the work that you're doing today?
Sure. Yeah. So um, I always had this, ever since I wanted to get into restaurants at 18, I always had this question of how could I create a dream job? And I found the answer in how bees operate. So when bees operate, they go to different flowers, they extract nectar, they transfer pollen between the flowers make fruit, the bees go back to the hive, they make honey, and I had this question of how could I create this dream job? And so this metaphor of the bees basically said, hey, if I work here, I work there, I read this book, I go to this conference, I extract all these insights, maybe I could combine them all together and create this unique job. And so coming out of that course, I went to work at a restaurant group, and then I went to work at a tech startup, which was working with restaurants. And it was in that tech startup that I had this revelation about the bees. And so as I had this revelation about the bees, I started writing a book, and I said, "Oh, this is a book that needs to be told to every student in America." We're told not to do all these things, but I said, "No, like, you got to do all these things, and then take the best from them and combine them into something new." And 2 weeks before leaving New York to actually focus on writing this book, my old boss had told me, "Hey, Ernesto, you should join me. I'm gonna go to the Palm and prepare it for a sale because it was a very old company, family-owned business, and preparing it for to exit. The owners wanted to retire, and he told me, he said, "I'm going to give you the keys. You can go ahead and do what you do best, which is implement systems and technology, and this is going to be the best opportunity of your life. And I was really a little unsure, and he said, look, I'll give you a big title, I'll give you a salary, it's going to be amazing. And I said, you know what, let's do it, this sounds great. And 3 weeks into the job, we get slammed with $100 million lawsuit. And that was kind of a big shell shock. That wasn't really included in the job pitch. And even though, I was hit with it, and I went to my boss and I said, hey, like, Jens, like, WTF? He said, look, just focus on what you were brought here to do. Like, don't worry about all the other noise, just focus on your task. And a year and a half later, we ended up selling the business to one of the largest privately held restaurant groups in the country. And that was the pandemic. It literally happened the day before the pandemic. And my title became restaurant systems engineer. And I guess I created that dream job, or some would say. And then ironically, it was time for another decision. It was time to decide not to be in the world of restaurants anymore. So that's kind of my short story, told through the lens of the bees, and how kind of what brought me in, at least to the pandemic point.
Great story. And the full version you can find on YouTube if you type in AAF Creative Zen presents Ernesto Mandowsky, where he did share not only his story, but he also actually shared some really interesting exercises and workshops, which we'll allude to in a little bit. You've alluded to now a little bit of the bees, the honey, the peas. Could you further, elaborate on, well, how bees and honey have impacted your life, and then how you've now integrated that into your business and your offerings and speaking and coaching and consulting, and why it's important?
Yeah, definitely. So after COVID started and we were in the middle of the pandemic, I said, I got to finish this book. And so that was the primary thing. I finished Newbie, I published it, and at the end of the book, I had this vast, profound realization that this beautiful story of the bees and restaurants and hospitality really was just a lot of fear. It was fear of being an entrepreneur, going after it, actually creating my own path. And so at the end of the book, I said, it's time to face all the fears and start my own business. And I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but cross-pollination design needed to be in the world. Cross-pollination design specifically, that behavior that bees do. They go to all these flowers, just like founders and people go to all these different flowers in their lives. When you're building a company, you're an entrepreneur, you have to go to project, you have to go to meet with clients, you have to meet with city professionals, community leaders, attend events, post content, finish projects, build automations. You have to do all these things. You have to go to all these different flowers around you. And you have to extract and transfer all these insights that you're learning. But the distinction between bees and founders is that bees are incredibly connected. They know exactly how to work with each other. And founders, visionaries, were 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years into the future. We're so focused on the future that it's so difficult for us to stay organized in the present moment to take us there. So we'll say things like, oh, my team will help me out. My team will build that automation. My team will do this. But most people, when they start a business, they don't have a team. They don't have the money. They don't have any of this stuff. They don't have the resources. So we think of ourselves as that link between the founder and the rest of their team and their systems whenever they are ready to hire a team, so that the team, as soon as they arrive, they get to work. They're not spending months at a time setting up systems to get to work, but they're just going. We're really enabling the cross-pollination inside companies to help the companies improve profit and performance.
Amen. And one thing we, clearly share, passion for is startups and entrepreneurship. And Ernesto, as you could see through his website, through his social media, through his content, he believes that everyone has a gift, their honey, that can make a huge impact in the world. And throughout writing his book, he discovered the power that we all have to create jobs, products, and services that live at the unique intersection of our passions, skills, and experiences. So now he's teaching people how they can build businesses around their honey through his company, CPD Advisors. What are some of the tools, resources, methodologies, best practices that you assist your clients and businesses of all sizes, not just startups, when they do engage you and CPD Advisors?
Yeah, well, I came up with a framework, a visual to kind of understand every company. That's called the 6P system. So the 6P stands for 6 pillars. And every business, whether you're a 1 person, a 100 person, a million person, you're in business services, you're a health coach, you're an acupuncture doctor, everyone needs to have priorities. You need to set goals. You need to have people, your relationship management. You need to have project management, understanding how you execute. You need to have promotion, which is how you tell your story through content. You need to have playbooks, which are your SOPs, which are training programs, and you need to have planning, which is daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly planning. These 6 pillars are critical in every single business. And so we teach these 6 pillars through, there's many tools out there, but our preferred tool is Notion. We use Notion, we use Tally Forms, we use Zapier, we use a number of tools. Those are just tools. I mean, it could be Notion, it could be Asana, it could be Trello, it could be any of the tools, whatever works for the business. Well, what's important is having a framework, a shared understanding between teams on how it is that you manage these 6 pillars.
And that's vital for anybody at any stage. From your experience, could you share a success story of how you've assisted a founder, a business owner, or somebody that you were working with from these tried and true methods, and how that assisted them with getting to the next level and next stage?
Yeah, sure. So I'll call him John. I met John when I was starting. I was starting pretty early. And John was building a sports analytics company. And, John heard about what I do, what I study, what I do, and we went out to lunch, and he said, listen, I'm in an MIT systems engineering class, and you say you're a systems engineer, like I need your help. And I said, okay, I don't know anything about sports, but I can definitely help you out, or I can try to help you out. And at the time, he was just a 1-person company. So we sat down, we mapped out his 6 pillars, we put together his priorities, the relationships he had with his people, all those relationships, the projects he had to manage, the product that he was building. And through working together, he was able to bring on his cousin, who helped him with some of the admin work, keeping track of all these things. And he actually started working on fundraising to raise some money. And through fundraising, he raised around $500,000. He then eventually hired a larger team. His team grew to 5, and continuing to work together, he eventually would get a fundraising round from Adidas, and eventually would grow his team to 15 people. So now we're still working together. I actually don't work with him anymore. I work with his director of operations, and we are building the infrastructure that helped him go from 1 to 15 people and close over $3 million in revenue in fundraising, which is an amazing feat for most entrepreneurs that they don't make it past year 1 or 2, especially in the world of technology. It's so competitive to get fundraising dollars. So just being organized was able to help him navigate the fundraising process and the product development process.
Amen. We're so proud of John, um, and that is a great success story. And maybe we will find a way to link some documentation of that in the show notes. You are very passionate about, and very proud, and very vocal, and very fanboyish at time with a certain system called Notion. And I'd like to hear, maybe if you could kind of just walk us through the story of how you initially discovered Notion, how it initially obviously was impactful on your life, on your business, on your practice, and now how you not only advocate for Notion to the general broader community through some of the workshops and some of the speaking engagements that you're facilitating now, but also how you specifically integrate that with your clients to help them streamline processes, become more efficient, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So it was right when I was like a month away from publishing the book, Newbie, that my friend said, hey, you got to check out this tool and you got to check out this guy. And I went on YouTube, and there's this guy named August Bradley, who is an influencer, I guess, a creator. He was talking about how he uses Notion. And he was saying how he basically organizes his life into 10 pillars, and pillars can be thought of like health, finance, career, family, spirituality. I mean, everyone has a different name for this. And how under those 10 pillars there are goals, and under those goals there are initiatives, and then there are tasks, and there are people that you connect with, and there's content that you create. And I started taking this course, and sorry, so after watching this guy's content, he then offered a course where he teaches people how to implement the PPV methodology. That was his way of his framework. And through doing the work, I said, wow, like this is how we can bring cross-pollination to life. This is how you can connect the dots. And so as I got deeper and deeper into Notion and launching my company, I said, okay, he has PPV, I have my own version. I would end up calling it the 6P system, 6 pillars. And I would eventually come up with my own framework and then rebuild it in Notion. And so inside of Notion, there are your priorities, your people, your projects, your promotions, your playbooks, your planning. All this stuff is inside Notion. And it's not just a brain for your own brain, but your entire team can work off of the same brain. My biggest issue with training companies is that they teach you a fancy diagram, they leave you with your own tools to implement. So I decided I'm going to not only teach you the diagrams and the strategies, but also give you a tool to implement it. So that's what I've been working on through setting up these Notion workspaces for clients. And it has helped not only John, but over 50 other individuals and companies, ranging from just starting out John to Enterprise Erica, who I'm working with companies now that are 5 million plus in revenue and 30 plus people. So this stuff works. It definitely scales. I haven't tested it with companies in the thousands of employees, but pretty confident.
Well, we're getting closer. We are. We definitely feel you are getting closer. You're still relatively early in this journey, within the single digit amount of years, and these things take time. But thankfully, through your love and passion for systems, specifically Notion, you've now positioned yourself as a leader, I think, in a broader community, but at least specifically here in the South Florida, Miami community. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're currently offering to the community through your partnership with Notion?
Yeah, so I do not, disclaimer, I don't have an official partnership with Notion.
Fair enough.
They're very adamant about that, but
sure.
I am one of the passionate ambassadors that have launched what's called the Notion and Miami community. And what that is, it's a group of people that are passionate about the tool. We launched last week actually at Miami-Dade College. We had an in-person event where 6 different Notion leaders came together to share their wisdom. And this was just kind of like a mini TEDx event where people share how they use the tool. But the vision for this is to create a shared space, both in person and online, where people can just trade ideas, ask for support, and just form connections over their shared passion of Notion. So we have monthly workshops online. There also is a Slack community that I started yesterday. We have 3 members in there, 3 strong, and growing. And yeah, we just hope to bring people together because this is a relatively new tool, also in the single digits. It's in their 8th year, I believe, but they're super strong. And lots of people in Miami want to learn how to use this tool and want to lean on other power users of the tool. This is my way of creating that space. And who knows, if it turns into some business opportunities, great. If not, at least we're making friends and building goodwill.
I think there's a lot of value, and there definitely will be some business opportunities. That's one thing that we certainly vibe and connect on. Is we love discovering the value that is sometimes in plain sight. Sometimes it's a little bit hidden, and you have to do some research and beta testing and practice to try it. But we also love sharing value with our community. So on that topic, what are some great tried and true recommendations that you have between books, podcasts, best practices, things that have helped you in your life personally and professionally?
Definitely write your goals down. Like if you have goals, write them down. And yes, you can write it in a journal, but that paper is blowing off with the wind. Like you got to put your goals somewhere where you're going to always look at it every day. So I have my goals in Notion. So I'm always looking at my goals. I'm always looking at what I have to work on. Because if you're not refocusing back on what's critical, you're just going to react to whatever your ego wants you to react in the moment, and it can take you off track. And it's just so easy to get distracted nowadays. There's so much there's like more information now than ever in the history of humanity. Like it's so easy to get distracted. And so you have to write down your goals, write down what you're working on, look at it every single day till it's done, and do not deter from it. That is so critical. That's one thing. Write it down. 2, don't spread yourself too thin. Work on 3 goals at a time at most, 4, 5 at max. But do not spread yourself any thinner than that because you're just not going to get it done and you're going to be disappointed with yourself and everyone's going to be disappointed and false promises and it's the whole spiraling, anxiety that is just building that we create ourselves by choosing to work on too many goals. And then in terms of books, my favorite book is The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's really eye-opening book that combines the world of spirituality and corporate culture. So it's a very interesting book that I have read and I keep on my desk all the time. And I think the last big tip that I share with people is create space. People do not create enough space in their lives, in their day, in their schedule, in their relationships, because we love to be hyper efficient, organized, whatever. We feel like we need every minute of the day needs to be productive, and we don't create space anymore. And by not having space, or slack, or bandwidth, just leads to overwhelm and anxiety.
Which can lead to burnout, which is one thing that unfortunately takes a lot of passionate founders and leaders and everyday people off of their path in life. Unfortunately, we all can suffer from burnout. So those were definitely some great insights, and I'm going to further that sentiment with a free recommendation and opportunity for you to connect with myself. And, we'd love Ernesto to connect with this group as well, but it's a little bit far for him to drive. We are so excited and glad to have relaunched a goal setting accountability mini mastermind group that's held for free bi-weekly on Tuesday nights called Action Club, which is Action and Zen, AXEN. It's a safe space for anyone, not just a startup founder, a dreamer, a doer, a passion pursuer, a creative entrepreneur, and anybody else in between, to come with their dream, goal, idea, side project, side hustle, or none of those things. We literally give you a notebook and encourage people to write down 150 life goals. I want to get an Aston Martin. I want to travel to Australia. I want to make $1 million. And then and that's not all at once. We, give you the notebook and then let you continue to, write those goals down over time. But in the meeting, after we go through a little intro exercise, we help people break down smarting their goals, making them specific, measurable, actions oriented, results driven with the time constraint. And we then have breakout sessions where we encourage people to think about items and tasks and steps, which we call action items, that they can do between this meeting and the next meeting in 2 weeks from now to help them get closer to their goal. So, for example, one of my goals right now is purchasing commercial real estate. And thankfully, somebody in my breakout group was helping me smart my goal and define my action items by helping me, okay, what's the first step? Well, you're going to have to get pre-qualified, so you could certainly go through that process. You have to identify your deposit so you know how much you could put down. And then when you do find a building, you do have to look at the zoning and look at if there's like an association that will have to have approvals and a couple other things. So those were my action items that I worked on. And actually, by going through that process, the property that I had identified that I thought I wanted to purchase ended up not being the best use for my goal. So it's a free thing. You can find it on Eventbrite, on Facebook. AXEN, started by an incredible gentleman, Ivan Dynamo de Jesus, who's helped thousands of people for free achieve their goals. So we'd love to share that. And I guess we have already previously alluded to, Ernesto loves to share. Could you, and share just knowledge and wisdom and insight, could you share a little bit of your podcast to plug it, and maybe let some people know other ways that they could connect and engage with you, either digitally or potentially physically in person?
Yeah, definitely. So I started a podcast. You and I are on this podcast journey together, my brother. I started a podcast earlier this summer called the Regenerate Your Business podcast. And when people think of the word regenerate, the dictionary meaning is to reinvigorate or to add life to. So when we think about when we're starting our companies, growing our companies, it can be very overwhelming, lots of anxiety, lots of just confusion, chaos, and there are these insights that successful leaders share on the podcast of how they regenerate their business, how they regenerate their own business, how they regenerate the business of their clients through the work that they do with their honey. So yeah, people can check out the Regenerate Your Business podcast on Spotify. We have it also on YouTube, the video versions. And if people want to connect with me, I'm on pretty much every social media platform. My handle is Ernesto _CPD. and you could just shoot me a DM there. Or if you want to schedule time on my calendar, you can just go to freesystemscall.com. And at the bottom, there's a scheduling link. My first call with people is never really a sales pitch. It's just a, hey, what are you working on? And how can I support? How can I offer some resources? How can I offer guidance? Do you actually need consulting, or like do you just need a little bit of redirection? So yeah, you could reach out on any of those channels. I'm sure we'll include it in the show notes. And yeah, pretty accessible.
Yeah, glad to. And I'm gonna give a lovely testimonial here that will mark as a clip and turn into an audio soundbite and maybe add to Ernesto's website. So I can truly speak from experience and can never give enough praise and thanks and gratitude to Ernesto. We connected through a mutual friend, Carla, Raw Chef Carla, who spoke at Creative Zen as well. And at that time, Ernesto, who was still early on in his entrepreneurial journey a few years ago, had expressed interest in sharing at Creative Zen. I had him tell me his story after a talk one day when we sat down and got to know one another, gave my feedback and thoughts on some ways to improve the story as it was continually developing. And we, from that initial interaction, built a lovely friendship and support system for one another because we're both very much aligned, motivated, passion-driven, purpose-driven entrepreneurs. And fortunately, I voiced my intention into the universe that I, at this time, wanted to begin writing my first book. And thankfully, Ernesto had already published his first book. And fortunately, at this time, we lived not too far from one another in Fort Lauderdale. And I asked Ernesto something that actually I kind of picked up from the Accent Club, if he would be willing to be an accountability partner, an accountability buddy for me in this book writing process. Because admittedly, I, very highly functioning entrepreneur. I do a lot of things. I'm spreading a lot of different directions. And sometimes I admittedly don't make the time for the tasks that Ernesto previously alluded to, which is so important. And I really just needed, I don't even want to say I wanted, I really did need somebody not to hold my hand through the book writing process, but to show up for me. He was also preparing to work on some other writing projects as well. That my ask was if he could meet with me initially just on a monthly basis whenever the schedule aligned, so we could sit down and find some time that we could dedicate to writing, which I attribute and put in the book, put in my my talks now, that I probably wouldn't have wrote Learning to Choose, which led to this podcast, if it wasn't for the support of Ernesto. And then I'm going to just take it a couple steps further, if you don't mind, Ernesto.
Go for it.
Which I don't think
Love
you will.
Love a good testimonial.
Ernesto, God bless him, from the friendship that we developed. I mean, he provided so much support and insight. The first easy, quick one, I'm so grateful for. It's not a formal men's group that you've invited me to, but a group of men that you've brought together, like-minded, motivated, passionate, creatives, entrepreneurs that meet for dinner and most recently lunch. For your birthday celebration at Cote Miami last week. But through, and that has had a lot of, I've gained a lot of insights and connections and friendships from that, from other like-minded men on the path, which I appreciate through the work that I do through my men's work and men's group. But through our conversations, Ernesto really has helped me level up personally and professionally. I was somewhat hesitant to start this podcast. I was even a little hesitant to take some of these steps with regarding developing my professional brand as an author, as a speaker, as a consultant, as a coach, as an entrepreneur, as a community builder, as a whatever. And you really helped me lean in on and dive into the fact that I can be this guy speaking about choices, hosting a podcast about choices, developing a course potentially, which I do plan to do around choices. And these were some limiting beliefs that Ernesto really did help me overcome. That you mentioned the term imposter syndrome earlier. I probably had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I waited many, many years to share my story out loud, verbally, in a creative Zen talk format, or in a speech type of format. I didn't think I had enough to share. And your encouragement, your friendship, your mentorship, your support really did help me level up mentally, confidence wise, to the point that, I am rounding out pretty much the first round of my Meet the Author book tour, which has been very well received. I've received overwhelming positive feedback. I received a letter in the mail last night from somebody that was moved by me sharing my story at John Knox Village, a retirement community, and he had actually written books and had written poetry many, many years ago and put the poetry aside, and he sent a very nice letter with a poem that he was inspired to write after attending this Meet the Author event, which, once again, rounding out this point, I might not have done if it wasn't for the encouragement by my friend, by my book writing accountability partner, and by my brother, Ernesto Mandowsky, who I'm forever grateful for supporting me in this journey. So I just wanted to take this moment of gratitude publicly here on this podcast, to share that and thank you. And I guess I'll now stop that tangent and just kind of turn it back over to you to kind of gauge your thoughts. I've shared bits and pieces of that with you. I am very grateful, but I don't know if everybody always takes the time to say thanks like that and really let you know that the time that you spend with them really has had not only a profound impact on their life, but now as a result, it's had a butterfly effect and impact on other people's lives. What does that do for you? How does that make you feel, or what are your kind of thoughts on impact like that?
I mean, it's always refreshing to hear. People are very focused on the results. And when I teach people about business systems or goal setting, I say, hey, you cannot control the results, you can only control the actions. And while that's true, it's very nice to hear from, what you were saying. It's amazing to hear this stuff, because I hear the results of all, and not that we spend time to get something out of it, but
sure.
But it's always cool to hear that stuff. So I mean, that's amazing. We talk a lot, so I love hearing the impact of all this stuff. And if you're listening and someone out there has made a huge impact, I encourage you to reach out to them and say, hey, thank you, because it really goes along. We don't do it for the thank you, but it does lift up your day. It's kind of paradoxical in a sense.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And you know what? This is something that I'm gonna just take another moment here. This is something that's been coming up for me more. That's very present. That having a friend and even having a mentor, and mentors can come in many different shapes and sizes. And maybe a mentor is older and more experienced and further established and along in their journey than you are at the stage of your life where you're at when they come into your life and are able to present mentorship. and maybe they're younger than you are, and maybe they don't have as much experience in terms of years, but they have some insight and guidance and golden information nuggets that they're able to share with you. And I was very grateful many, many years ago that a few people, as I outlined in the book, took an interest and a liking to me, that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and took the time of their life to mentor me. And those impacts influenced the path of my life, my journey, and helped me make some choices that helped me unlock my hidden potential, which is, now what I'm trying to help other people doing through the book and learning to choose and speaking and the podcast and all that. Because if I was able to do it as a regular Johnny 9 to 5 recruiter, anybody could do it. But I really commend you for even not just verbalizing it out loud in conversations, but even in terms of some of your messaging on your website and your bio, that you're even promoting mentorship, because I think it's something that unfortunately, it's not really taught in school. How do you get a mentor? How would you give mentorship? How do you go about facilitating these conversations? And from those kind of initial fortunate mentorship serendipity opportunities that came into my life early on in my entrepreneurial journey, I had kind of missed receiving mentorship over the last few years. And I was kind of yearning for a new level of mentorship, and began manifesting it, really, honestly, by just kind of putting it out there in my men's group with some of my friends and confidants. And fortunately, two very successful, very accomplished men recently came into my life and similarly took a liking to me. And one of them is mentoring me on commercial real estate. And the other one, who just shared at Creative Zen, who just had a very big exit from his companies, is mentoring me personally, health wise, working out wise, and professionally. So I'd like to raise the vibration of mentorship and pose this question to you, Ernesto. You mentioned that you like mentoring others. How would you encourage someone on their journey to go about seeking out mentorship?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I was gonna interrupt you and say I have something to say.
Perfect.
Um, I think 98% of the world is just waiting to react to whatever is next. And mentorship doesn't just manifest magically. It
Correct.
doesn't just appear at your doorstep. And the people that are qualified to mentor don't always have their hands open, hey, I'm mentoring people. Usually the people you want to be mentored by are the people that are most busy, that are doing huge things and don't really have the time to mentor you. So that presents a paradox. How do you get mentorship from these people who are crushing it and doing so many things? So I have my first mentor. He first off, he gave me a test. He said, I don't sit down with anyone for the first time until they read 3 books. And so he gave me the 3 books, and I read the books, and I sent him my summaries, and then he met with me. And he met, and we spoke, and he said, okay, what are you looking to learn next? And then I told him this, this, and this. And he said, great, here are 3 more books. Go read. And I did it. I read, sent him the 3 summaries, and same thing. What are you looking to learn next? And so I think people were looking for the next Jesus or the next Messiah to come and rescue us, but you are doing your own rescuing. You through doing the work, through doing the action, are going to find the insight you're looking for from these mentors. But it really requires a lot of work. So today, when people reach out to me and they say, "Oh, mentor me or teach me your ways," I say, "Cool. Here's a course. I designed a course to give you the foundation of what I do. Finish the course. Do the course. And through the course, I will mentor you as well. Because, so many people like say they want mentorship. They don't actually show that they want mentorship. They don't actually do the work. They don't actually show up. And it's kind of sad, but for those listening and you want mentorship, this creates an amazing opportunity for you because if you just show up and keep showing up, the person's going to be very impressed with you and they're going to put in the time with you because you're putting in the time. So don't just say you want mentorship, show up and tell people like what you're going to do or ask them what to do and do the work. Because
Amen.
yeah, I don't have, no one has time to like listen to another person who wants to be mentored and then they just ghost.
Correct. And it brings up a great David Goggins quote. No one is going to come help you. No one is coming to save you. And basically, you have to do the work yourself. If you don't know David Goggins, highly encourage you to Google him. Best-selling books, Can't Hurt Me, Baddest Human Being on This Planet, 3 Navy SEAL Hell Weeks, Army Ranger School, TAC-P, marathons, pull-up bar record, just absolutely one of the most motivational people I've ever followed. And I would just want to follow up by asking you, what were either the first 3 books or the second 3 books?
The first 3, because I told them about hospitality, it was he had me read the book about Starbucks experience. He had me read a book called about Charlie Palmer. Charlie Palmer is the Chicago Steakhouse. And oh my god, I cannot remember. Another one I read was Mavericks at Work. Another one I read was Simply Better. And I'm blanking on the last 2. They're pretty solid.
Amen. We'll try to link that in the show notes if you could just type that to me later. Definitely encourage you guys to follow Ernesto, connect and engage with Ernesto. If you are in the Miami or South Florida area and you see that he has events, I highly encourage you to attend. I've previously attended some very insightful workshops. I wanted to just touch on takeaways briefly in closing. One of the best takeaways that I received from a workshop you previously had done years ago, which was a year-end planning workshop, amongst many things that you provided insight on that workshop, was to send year-end holiday gifts to clients with thank you notes. And I started doing that, and not only was it appreciated, it was then followed up, used as a follow-up point from the client's perspective, that they had that candle on their desk, or whatever the gift was, and then they did remember us, and we thankfully provide so much value with Zero Empty Spaces and the other stuff that we do that's tough to forget. But in closing, what are some takeaways, either from those books, the mentorship, or just your life, that you would want to end with, that could be one little golden nugget of insight in addition to all the other golden nuggets of insight that we've already shared on this episode
The
here?
end of the rainbow golden pot nugget. I think your life is yours. I think most of the world has been designed before you were here, and your unique way of living it is probably not going to be accepted by the world as it is. And you just have to be ruthlessly focused on making your life what you want it to be. And by looking at your goals, by focusing on what you got to do, by asking for help, by showing up, by doing the work, by giving. And don't let other people trash your dreams. Don't let other people get in the way. Don't let other people's thoughts get in the way. It's you have one life to live. So make it yours.
Amen. I'm going to double down on that sentiment as we close out here. I vividly remember, and Andrew, my business partner, vividly remembers, there were some people that told us our ideas were not that good. And one of those ideas was doing an art fair inside of mansions that were for sale that people only got to on a boat. And I never will forget a very, very highly respected and successful gallerist that had an art gallery in an arts district that doesn't exist anymore told me, no, my clients, they're not going to want to go on the boat to these mansions. You should just do the art fair with tents in the street in front of my gallery. And needless to say, if we would have listened to, the Debbie Downers, the Nelly naysayers, the Salty Sallies, we might not have carried that momentum of doing art inside of luxury waterfront homes that were for sale to then creating affordable working artist studios inside of commercial real estate that was vacant with zero empty spaces, which we're now preparing to open our 30th space in the last 4 years, now across 3 states. So I truly believe and share the same sentiment. There will be people that unfortunately will try to rain on your parade, will try to poo-poo on your dreams and ideas, but you could do them anyway. And the closing quote I'll share, a lot of people say, you should do what the book says to do. Well, what book is that? Do they update these books? You can write your own book. You can create your own path. You can live the life that you want to live against all odds. And it all starts with a couple choices, probably outside of your comfort zone. And if you take these choices, you can unlock your hidden potential to craft the life you want to live, to support your friends, your family, your community, the art world, or the world beyond, or whatever that looks like for you with your dreams, goals, passions, or whatever might be important to you in your life. If it's systems, if it's art, if it's food, if it's challah, if it's honey, if it's bees, all of it you can impact. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us today. For one last, could you just share website, social, best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, best way, socials are Ernesto_CPD. Website, just go to freesystemscall.com. You can book 15 minutes in my calendar. Or just shoot me a DM. And the Regenerate Your Business podcast is on Spotify.
Awesome. We appreciate it, Ernesto. Thank you guys for tuning in today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm an open book, learningtochoose.com, Evan at learningtochoose.com, Evan at zeroemptyspaces.com. We're open books and on the gram. So hope you guys got some value out of this. I know I did. And you keep creating and have a good day. Cheers.